What is up, everyone? JD here. Hope you're all doing well today. Today, I'm really excited to bring you the full review of the SCHRADE TRUIX. This one here is a very interesting knife. What we're going to be doing today is going over knife specs, size comparisons, and then we'll dive into my thoughts and impressions of the knife. So the Truix is a made in the USA knife from SCHRADE, part of their Alpha class lineup. So this one here is going to be a little bit more premium than the Slight that I recently reviewed on the channel. It has a 3.5-inch S35 VN bead blasted Tonto blade, 4-inch steel liners with a G10 overlay, 7.5 inches overall for the length, and claimed weight is 4 ounces. Let's go ahead and check the weight of the Truix out. 4 ounces, not too bad for steel liners. So coming in at about 4.2. So this is the third knife in a row that I've weighed from SCHRADE that has come in a little bit heavier than the advertised weight. Let's go ahead and do some quick size comparisons, then we'll jump into thoughts and impressions. First up is going to be my Demco AD 20.5. These two are very comparable in size, and then we'll bring out the Spyderco Shaman, and this should hopefully start to help give you an idea of what that 7.5-inch length really equates to when you break down these size comparisons. Let me go ahead and move these two out of the way, and we'll bring out a couple more size comparisons. First, we'll bring out the Benchmade Bug Out. This one here, again, going to be very comparable in size, and then we'll bring the SIG K320 by Hogue out here as well. You can see the Hogue is just a little bit bigger overall, and it is coming in more girthy. Let's go ahead and move these two out of the way, and we'll bring out the final two comparison knives, and then we'll do the thickness profile as well. First, we're going to bring out the sub 3-inch comparison model. This is the Kubi KU321, also known as the Kubi Royal. Fantastic little DT folder, and the Buck 110. So you can see very similarly slender to these two knives, and I know that the knife looks like it's probably close in size to that, but when you actually bring them up here, you can see the Truix is just longer overall. So let's go ahead and do some thickness comparisons. Let me get the 110 out of the way, and we will start with the Kubi Royal. As you can see here, it is the same thickness as the Kubi Royal. We'll bring the Demco AD 20.5 out here. You can see the AD 20.5 is thinner. We'll bring out the Bug Out. You can see the Bug Out's thinner. And just in case you're curious, because most Spydercos run around the same thickness, this is about as thick as your run-of-the-mill Spyderco. So those are your size comparison. Hopefully that helped you from a size reference on this knife. Let's go ahead and jump into thoughts and impressions. The first thing that I'm going to jump into is going to be the ergos. The ergos on this knife are fantastic. The pocket clip lays flat, does not impede or hinder how it feels in hand. The chunky nature of the knife feels really good, and the weight on it really makes it feel very premium. So I do appreciate the little bit of extra weight, because still under 5 ounces is a fairly lightweight knife. Now the G10 on here, really well done. I've had a lot of time with the knife. I've had a lot of time to experience the G10, and they did a really good job. Even where it's transitioning is nice and smooth from the steel to the G10. You feel a little bit on the edges, but I think that's because of the pattern, not because of the fitment. So the fitment on this knife is really well done. The pocket clip looks good. I think you could probably eliminate the dual branding. I think actually just this here instead would be perfect. I think that would be one thing that I would say could change. The jimping here does actually help. At first, I was kind of turned off a little bit by that, but when you actually go to hold the knife and you're going to actuate the crossbar lock, it actually helps keep it from sliding, so I do appreciate that. And the G10 also, because of the way that it's milled, really does help with the grip as well. So I really have grown to appreciate that, whereas at first I wasn't too thrilled about this jimping. It's not overly aggressive. It's a little pokey, but it's not super hot or uncomfortable, especially when you're holding it in the palm and holding the knife to, again, actuate that crossbar lock for closing. Really like that. The finish on the steel coating, or the coating on the steel, The finish is really well done. Looks really, really nice. Doesn't have any imperfections whatsoever, and it's really nice and smooth. And it's not that dissimilar from like when you're looking at the Adamas or you're looking at the 940 from Benchmade. They have the inside steel liners and then they have the material laying over top. What they have done here is they have the steel liner underneath going the full length of the knife, and then they have the steel layover where everything is hidden for the crossbar lock and the Omega springs underneath of that. So it's sandwiched in between as opposed to being sandwiched in the G10. I think it does aesthetically make it look a little bit more pleasant, but I also kind of wonder what it would have looked like if this material had just gone the full length of the knife. I think it would look really good against that blade. So I don't know that it's necessarily a complaint, more so an observation. Now, they did a really good job with the minimal hardware. This is where your Omega spring is sandwiched. You can see here it doesn't go all the way through. You can just see here where the Omega spring is connecting versus where it's a standoff. And then you have the two standoffs in the back. So pretty well done when you take a look at something, say like a bug out, or you take something like a 940 and you have the extra standoff up here. They don't do that. They just have the pin and then they use the pivot to actually sandwich that in. So very minimal hardware for a crossbar lock style knife. So that is something I did want to point out. I really like the studs on the thumb stud and on the crossbar lock. They're very nice, just on the verge of becoming pokey but grippy on the crossbar lock, but really nice on the thumb studs. I like these a lot. They're very comfortable to use and I appreciate them. Talking about the action, well, actually, let me back up to the Omega springs. So just like any Omega spring knife that I've ever operated, you can cause it to pop out with a little kick of the knife. Bug out takes a lot more effort than it did before I replaced it with the aftermarket Omega springs, and it's because the weight of the blade on the SIG pops out the same way. So I feel like that to me means that the detent's pretty good. There's a little bit of play when you go to initially release it and then it hits. But as far as kind of like moving around, it doesn't, it makes a noise, but it's more of like the movement is kind of like that. The blade is not actually coming out fully, even though it just did there because I grabbed it hard. It's more like popped up here. So it's a little bit loose, but when you compare it to a bug out, when you compare it to a SIG, they all have that soft spot where you go to initially release it, but when you hit the breaking point, it is really, really nice. Now, I have fidgeted with this some, but not a ton, so it doesn't have any of that drop shut action. But again, that is because, or not again, but that is because the Omega springs on here have good strength to them, so they feel really good when you pull back on the springs. Getting to the knife itself, it is a little bit more of a robust geometry because they elected not to take that flat grind all the way to the top. Now, the edge on the knife when I got it was a little bit rough. So I'm not sure if that's because they had been messing with it, or, you know, like if it's been handled at SCHRADE, or if it's been passed around. So I didn't do anything to the factory edge. All I did was just give it a little strop to see if that would correct the issue, and it did. So really, really nice. Oops, to help if I landed on there. It's hard to do this through the camera. So really good edge from the factory, but it is thicker for sure than, say, like a bug out. So I'm going to bring the bug out back out here one more time, and just so that you guys can see, the geometry on here is just thicker overall. And let me try to do it this way so you guys can see it. There you go. So just a little bit of a thicker geometry, and I honestly think the knife would benefit from this being just a tall or flat grind. You can make it a tanto, but take that flat grind all the way up to right beside the thumb stud, and then drop it, curve it here, and bring it down for that sharpening choil. Sharpening choil on here is like a Spyderco, so it looks bad because it doesn't have immediate termination, but if you actually look at it when you're going up the stone, it's going to be fine, but this is going to get thick really quick. So I'd like to see SCHRADE adjust and change that. It has a really nice acute point out on the tip here for the Tonto. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that to show up, but it worked really well for the draw cuts, and it really did move through the cardboard nicely. I had no issues at all. I think this kind of reminds me more of the 940, like the smaller Osborne, not the larger one. It really kind of gives me those vibes, so I feel like that's what it's after. I made these complaints with the slight, if you watch that video, flatten the screws. I don't think you necessarily need to increase the fold because I really like this pocket clip. It works really well. But I think if you can flatten those screws and make them inset like what you see on, let's see, here you go. So you see how those are inset and flat and they're V'd. I think if you can do that, and at this price point, I certainly think you should, I think that'll improve it a lot. The ceramic bearings are very smooth. They work really nice. I've fidgeted with this a ton, cut with it plenty, and handled it a lot. It has no up and down, no side to side. This is locked up really solid. I think I would have liked to seen a stone wash instead of a bead blast, but on S35EN, you're not going to have to worry too much about corrosion. Made in the USA. I like the branding here, right? I like the S35EN, made in USA, and I really don't think you need the number here. I think you can pull that back into the blade if you want to have it on there for warranty, like if you think there's something from a warranty perspective that you're trying to track. I think pulling that back, it's not outlandish. I really think it's okay on the blade. I would just say, actually you can, since you have the logo out here on the handle, on the blade, not the handle, you can just get rid of it on the tip here and have the SCHRADE there. I think that's okay. I really like this knife. I'm really happy with it. Now, let me get you to the sticker shock. The knife is $167.95 on Knife Center. So it is right there competing with the polymer version of the Benchmade Bug Out, but it is cheaper than the Mini 940. That's what's interesting to me, is that you're getting a really well-built knife that, you know, a couple of minor complaints, but overall pretty well built. S35EN instead of S30V. So a little bit of a steel upgrade there. You're getting G10 handles, no flex, and it feels really good in hand, and a pretty good, I mean, for their first run of USA made knives, this is a really impressive build. I would say if you're looking at the 940 and it's too expensive for you, this is obviously a more affordable blade, and I think it's a more attractive look. I think the other option too here is if you can find a scale maker that doesn't have an issue with the carve out that they need for the Omega springs, you could customize this and make it look really interesting. You could even do, I think, a $40 or $60 regrind of the blade here and make it a little bit thinner. And I think you got an awesome knife here. So you have a nice solid foundation, and again, really comfortable ergos. I like this knife. I think it's pretty good. I think it's priced fair for a premium version of a USA crossbar lock knife. I think SCHRADE is headed in the right direction. I really am excited that they're making these knives here in the US, and I'm very happy to see that it's very well made. Like, this is manufactured well. The machining, the quality, the details on it are really good, and I'm happy to see it. I think the pocket clip, again, probably in the blade grind are my biggest complaints. Even if they didn't want to change the way that they logo it out, I think those two changes would be what I would like to see out of this knife for like a version 2. If you enjoyed today's video, do me a favor, leave a like, consider subscribing if you're not already subscribed. I'd love to have you follow along. Thanks to everyone out there that has been regularly following the channel, leaving likes and comments and helping me grow. I appreciate each and every one of you. I love you guys. I hope you have a fantastic week. Until next time, peace.